Hello everyone and welcome to your next instalment. My name is Kenny Lawson and for the next 10 minutes we're going to be talking economics. So strap yourself in and I hope this is going to be useful for you. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge that I'm on Gadigal land and pay respects to elders past, present and emerging. I'd also like to pay respects to those with lived experience. It helps us as researchers really understand the nuances of the issues more clearly and also inspires us as a community more broadly to do a better job. So we've got 5 slides, as I say, just under 10 minutes, I hope. And the concentration is going to be on purpose and approach rather than the nitty-gritty details. So you're not going to get any Greek alphabets and equations. I'm going to concentrate on the purpose. Why do we need economics at all? What's the approach being taken? Is that aligned with their ethical suppositions with what we need? And how would the local stakeholders actually use the information? So without further ado, I'm looking at my shiny head on screen. It's evening time here in Sydney, and there's nothing more distracting than looking at yourself. So I'm going to stop my video and then we can concentrate on the slides. Okay. So there are 5 key dimensions that I really want to emphasize, and this is the approach that economics is taking, and it's iterative. And if we make any mistakes, we go back and we do it again. Key thinking is to do a good job. So the first thing is support. Why do we really need economics at all? Well, I think as many of us know, the mental health system and its wider drivers it's chronically underfunded and has been for a long time, leading to service gaps, overstretched staff. And as we all know, this results in our communities suffering from excess ill health, adverse outcomes, and it affects us all, as we'll go on to discuss in these slides as well. So as part of our collective efforts, it's important that we not only understand the serious nature of the present issues, but also clearly identify what services we need, the levels of investment this entails, which is necessary to pay for staff. We're also, as a research team, keen on technology that requires further investment. And there's the practical day-to-day operational costs of running an effective and responsive service. So if we really do need and want right care first time where you live, that needs investment, and it needs greater investment and it needs smarter spend. So the economics is part of this broader initiative. More importantly, it's not just about what we need as an investment, it's about valuing the impacts, and that includes mental health, it includes the individuals of need, but it's also about situating that within a wider discourse. We all benefit. Communities are stronger, economies and social life are stronger from keeping people well. So we're going to view mental health as an asset rather than a deficit and think of the flow and benefits that result from that. I will, however, be invoking terms such as dollars and finance and business cases, and those can sound very cold, when we're dealing with issues which are so dear to many of us. However, rest assured, the approach of the economics in this project is not equating the issues of living a good life to crude dollars. No, it's the finance there is about the foundation to help us achieve what we need to turn our aspirations into day-to-day operational successes. So the purpose here, once the economics begins, is ultimately to create business cases. Now, what we mean by that is when we're identifying service gaps and when, as a collective, we're identifying and prioritizing what we need to do first and over time, I need to, and the economists on the project need to really try and cost up all of this. As I say, this converts into people's staff salaries and day-to-day running costs. And it's bringing together the costs of investment and the broader benefits to the individuals, communities, the health system and wider together, so that we understand where the best investments are, so that if we have to prioritize, then we know where to. And also when we're bidding for additional resources, which the economics is purpose to help you do, then we can make a very clear case that not only is there a need, but actually we know how to address it, which we do. And this is all part of the process. Now, the economics is embedded within the participatory approach, as Louise has very eloquently outlined in detail. And this is true of economics as well. Often the practice of economics and other projects is on the side, it's in a darkened room. Economists in other projects, not necessarily contact the service users themselves or the broader community. We're going to be different here. The economics is embedded in the participatory approach. It's embedded in the values of that approach. And I'll be guided by, and the economists in the project will be guided by what you need with respect to the outcomes that you want to value, the approach that we take, and all of that will be discussed at workshops. All of that will be worked out together, and I and the economists will pivot accordingly. So it's all in the spirit of co-design. Now, the economics is integrated then into the technical model itself. It's not a standalone exercise. The costs and the outcomes will be layered into the model functioning, and the measures of economic value will be automatically generated. And this matters because to provide consistency from the economics and the underlying modelling, that needs to happen together. So it's a larger team. But it's also, and more crucially, to empower local users. So once these models are completed, it's not the end of the story. We want to be capacity building people on the ground. And economic information can often be the purview of us, our strange species, the economists. But as George Bernard Shaw says, sometimes the professions can be conspiracies against the laity. Now, I'm lay at absolutely many things, and my job here is to try and ensure that those who need to invoke economics into the business cases to support the ethical case can do so, and the model will help you do that automatically. So it's important that we work together on that. But let me re-emphasize the final dimension, which is value. So the key thing here is the benefits. So I talked initially around the cost, what we need to deliver, but it's about the benefits really. It's not just about avoiding ill health, albeit people in acute care need support urgently. At the same time, it's also about taking a prevention approach, a mitigating and management approach, and to value the full impacts and the full benefits of that. That goes beyond individuals, it goes to communities, carers, it goes to the economy as well. People can work more efficiently and take less days off if they're well. So the economy benefits and social life and civic life more generally. So what we want to do where possible is A, acknowledge those wider benefits, and B, try and quantify them as much as possible. So again, we all know what we need to do from an ethical and normative perspective. We need to help people. The economics here is just a supporting case. It's the Support Act, and it's there to provide the financial foundations for us. So what are some of the key considerations? What is some of the key information? Well, I've touched on some already, but ultimately when we invest in communities, it has those flow-on consequences. So we reduce psychological distress, that's going to improve quality of life more generally, and also length of life and the potentialities that people have. And that again aggregates considerably to a community and population level. So everyone talks about the challenges of mental health, but we want to turn this into, from a deficit approach into a more positive well-being and asset narrative. So when we invest in reducing problems, we're expanding people's horizons. Now, that said, when people are in trouble, of course, there are acute service use, and we want to ensure that there are sufficient investments at that stage when necessary. But what we also want to show is that when we invest in the things that we know we need to do, then that actually can reduce acute service utilisation. It will reduce also the hospitalisations and the costs associated with that. Now, I'm only raising that because it can show one of the additional benefits to larger stakeholders, that if we invest sufficiently in prevention, mitigation, management, we can save downstream to reinvest in prevention as well. Now, that's notwithstanding that when people are in need, we have the right services available at the right time. Now, as I say, helping the individuals will also help their carers. As we all know, informal care is a key part of helping people through the different aspects of lived experience. And carers have to look after their own well-being as well. And I'm very keen within this project that we try and measure, manage and value the impact on carers, both from their quality of life perspective, but also if that impacts their ability to engage in civic participation and broader employment. Which then leads to the final bullet point here. Investing in mental health, as I say, increases participation rates for our youth, who often aren't well treated by our societies, I don't think, but we really want to focus on our youth. And by improving mental well-being, we want to make sure that people are in education and remain so. But we're also taking this life course approach as well. So it's education and investing in the determinants of well-being over the life course. And as people enter employment, protecting and improving our mental well-being, it increases the ability to work well. Now, as I say, and I want to emphasise, because this will come up when we go to workshops, is that we really do need to try to, if we can, identify the services and programmes specifically so we can cost what it takes to deliver. And all of that is to turn into the business case so that decision makers and funders know the investment required. Because we all know within health services, particularly acute health services, we're underfunded, it can be understaffed, and people are under so much pressure. So let's try and do this with a lot of attention to detail. Okay, apologies, my mouse is a little sticky. Now, what do we do with all that information? Now, don't get too worried about the level of detail here, but this is just an example of a model dashboard. So, like any great chefs and cookery programs, here's one we made earlier. And well, here is one we made earlier in a different part of Australia. And the idea behind this is to show rather than show you all the specific details and equations. It's a bit like driving a car. You want to see the dashboards. You want to drive the model. Now you can have a look under the hood if you wish. This is a very transparent process. But the dashboard here really gives you a whistle-stop tour of what we're trying to capture. So here, we're trying to capture interventions. Now, these are just examples. For each area we go to, you'll have the opportunity, and the team will be very responsive to identifying interventions that you need locally. But here, for instance, we have a number of different interventions, and I've just switched on post-attempt care and social connectedness, just for illustration. Now, at the same time, as we turn on new interventions, as we upscale or invest, then that also has downstream consequences on health systems and health and social sectors more broadly. Now, what we can do is at the same time is expand the capacity in those downstream services. So we're constantly managing the demand and supply, populations that need help, services that need to respond, and the investments required. And that's where the third little arrow comes in here. So the investment required. What the model will do is estimate the total resource which is incurred in business as usual, so what we have at the moment. It'll also then demonstrate the fact that that's not going to be enough. We have all this excess self-harm attempts, people living with psychological distress. So we then want to identify the costs of the intervention and who's going to pay for those. So for instance, with post-attempt care, and social connectedness, for illustration, we've said, okay, that's going to fall on the states, that's their responsibility. Now, in reality, it will be everyone's responsibility, but there'll be contributions from Commonwealth. What we also want to capture here is not just impacts on Commonwealth and states with regard to the financing, but also out-of-pocket costs. I'm very keen, and the team is very keen in general, with respect to equity issues. So one of the key barriers to mental health services is not just the provision, but the affordability, and that's regionally situated as well. So we want to try and capture out-of-pocket payments as well. We want to demonstrate very, very clearly the impact on expanding services and the opportunities of services on people themselves, because sometimes this is unaffordable, and we want to try and show that if that's the case. Now, at the bottom here is a summary of the economic metrics. These are not fixed in stone, but just for illustration. So what is a strange thing called QALYs? Well, I won't go into too many details, but as I say, as we invest in improving psychological distress and we avoid as much as we can the negative implications for self-harm and suicides, we're going to increase quality of life, we're going to increase life expectancy. And that can be summarised in a metric. It's not perfect, but it's a metric which can help us count the benefits of expanding life expectancy, expanding quality of life at the population level. Now, as we compare the cost of additional investment to the gains achieved. That can be purpose in a number of ways. Now, here is a cost per suicide avoided. Now, let me reiterate that as far as I'm concerned, we should be investing whatever it takes to avoid any suicide whatsoever. The purpose of having a cost per suicide is also to show that actually for governments and others, we can do this. It's not going to cost the earth to give people the support that they require. So that's the reason for showing this. The dollars, that's secondary. The purpose for showing it is we can do this efficiently, effectively, and ultimately it's about helping people. And by the same token, we can then also estimate this cost per quality. And then as a summary measure, we can look at the cumulative net benefit as well. So the overall net benefit to the health sector overall, taking into account the investment costs and services, the flow-on impacts, the quality adjusted life years as well. In the model run, it can be flexible regarding your needs. So all of this can be purposed into business cases to help you locally, not only understand the impact of investing, but to convert all of that into metrics that you can talk about internally when you're prioritising programmes, and also bidding for new funding. So combining this together, we do want to emphasise that this is all about valuing and investing in our youth and community more broadly. And there are then 3 stories that we tell when we take all this array of information. And I'm combining these 3 stories because one of the main problems within the health sector in general is that things get funded and then defunded. Political parties come and go, decision makers also shift chairs. Individuals, when they occupy these positions, bring their own ethical judgments and perspectives with regard to what health system is for. Now, the less socially minded of funders and decision makers think we only invest upfront to save in acute costs going forward. Now, we're going to go way beyond that, but we're going to generate this metric as well. So we can generate and invest to save. And actually what we've found in other models is that if we invest wisely in prevention services, actually we do prevent acute service costs, and those tend to be where the greatest costs lie as well. So we can purpose a metric to say, you know what, we're going to invest in intervention combinations X, Y, and Z, and there's a return on investment for you if you're only interested in saving money. Now, for the rest of us, we are more interested in viewing health and social systems and the economy more broadly as an investment in our well-being. So one of the metrics that we'll generate here, because this is what health economists tend to do more generally in the health sector at certain strategic levels are used to seeing, is a cost effectiveness measure. So this is the cost to achieve the health gains. So it's going back to that cost per quality metric. And this falls under the banner of cost effectiveness. So for single interventions, for multiple interventions, we then generate this metric as well. So it's taking the return on investment and we're saying, actually, what health gains are we achieving as well, and keeping it in those units, cost per health. But then more broadly, and where we're all purposed, I think, is that we want to value all of the impacts if we can: health, carers, economy, impacts on education. All of that would fall under a cost benefit analysis. Now, there's loads of different details under this. Just want to concentrate on the strategic intent and purpose of the economics here. We're costing interventions. We're trying to create this compelling case for you up front, and then we're going to capacity build people locally to develop this themselves ongoing. So final slide then, and again, to repeatedly re-emphasize, we do want to build capacity locally, because you know what, that helps us. It helps us educate ourselves about how to communicate well. It helps a legacy effect in terms of passing these models on, passing as much knowledge as we can on to people locally and communities more broadly. So we want to make ourselves or make you more useful and us to step away as quickly as possible, but we'll be here to support you in the future. It's ultimately about creating these business cases. I know that that's cold sounding, but it's really to make sure there's that financial foundation to help us as a community. And economics here identifies the level of investment, but it's all about beginning and ending with our youth in the communities. Economics begins with the ethical case and ends with it. So improving mental health is really about improving societal wealth, and that includes health, that includes social functioning and civic participation, and it includes education in the community. Mental health was really at the centre of all of this. It's been seen as a deficit historically. We only get involved when there's a problem. We're turning it on its head. We're going to see mental health as an asset, something to be invested in, something to be improved over time, something that we all benefit from. So thank you very much for your time. And I hope that was relatively useful as a broad sweep of the issues. And as we move forward, we really will get into the nitty-gritty and the detail, and it's a co-design process. The economics will only work if it's understood, if it's purposed by you, if it's influenced with what you want to see, and if it's actually used in practice to help invest in the things that we need to support the people that need it most. Okay, thank you for your time.